What's up everybody? Welcome to my YouTube channel, Kaio. My name is Kaio Dasilva, and today we're going to be talking about my pro football journey. This series will take you from me playing as a kid in New York to how I ended up here today in Thailand, playing professional football. Naturally, we'll begin with the first phase, the youth phase. My early interest in football began from just my culture, being raised by a Brazilian family, 2 immigrant parents, and an immigrant brother as well. It's kind of in the blood of the Brazilian culture, so that naturally influenced me growing up. Although I was the first in my family to be born in the US, through time I would become more Americanized as time went on. I became more Americanized, but I was very much raised as a Brazilian kid. The first time I ever joined an organized team was actually around 6 years old. I was introduced to the team by one of my closest friends in the world of football and out, Pierre Dasilva. Shout out him, big time player in Peru at the moment, doing his thing out there. Without him, I don't end up in my first team at 6 years old. Me and him were at a family party and he invited me to play for his WYSL team in Portchester, New York, which is about 15 minutes from where I grew up. So I went out there and eventually joined his team. The WYSL league is like town teams, basically. Each town has their, representative. So I actually went outside of my town to play with my good friend Pierre over there. Glad I did, because part of the developing of my love for the game was having teammates like him who made it more enjoyable to go to training early on. Some personal stories. I was kind of the big kid they threw in the back, so I kind of started out playing defense, and that's where I play now. Kind of just stuck there and tried to get better through the years, eventually playing other positions, but always knowing in the back of my head that's where I was destined to be. But yeah, some early struggles. I was not the best technically. I remember vividly trapping the ball with my knees, but trying to the ball rolling on the ground and me thinking my knees pushing them together was gonna be the answer. Not being able to control my emotions on the pitch, that was a big one. I vividly remember early on, my parents would go to the game and my father was a bit more vocal, very passionate football fan. Felt like he had to coach me during the game as well, so I would hear a lot from the side of the pitch, and I don't know why I couldn't keep it in. I would just start crying, I would cry and then play at the same time, like tears shedding down. And so those are some early struggles, but eventually through time, you get to learn how to control the emotions, play with less emotion, more, discipline. 6 years old to 12 or so, I played in these types of town teams here and there, not really staying on one team for that whole time. The 2006 World Cup, I can vividly remember being in Wildwood, New Jersey with my family, watching the penalties with France, Italy, watching that madness of a game with Zidane, the headbutt. Other notable memories from that World Cup, the Brazil team was stacked. Ronaldinho, R9, Kaká, who else? Ghana had a good team that year. Germany, England had all, top level teams, and being able to watch that and being a bit older and seeing the significance of the passion behind the game in that World Cup. From that point on, I started really falling in love with the sport along with playing myself. Then that year after, I went to Brazil the whole summer with my mom and my sister. Trained a little bit with some teams, local teams there. So just all that culture shock, meeting a lot of my family that I never knew. A lot of that culture shock really started connecting more with that Brazilian heritage and identity within me. And I was really proud of it, but also proud to be American. And I would start to realize more and more growing up how blessed I was to be born in America with the opportunities that I had. That was a little bit about my early stages, falling in love with the sport, just being able to play with my friends. being able to see the passion of the sport on other fans throughout the whole world, the significance, and then me eventually going with my family, spending a lot of time in Brazil, being in a country where the sport is the number one. In America, it's not like that. American football, baseball, basketball are the three that have the main focus, and then everything else is kind of under that. Around that age, I started then transitioning into more of a competitive football clubs. Not to say that those weren't competitive, you're still competing, trying to win the game at the end of the day, but you're a bit younger and the stakes and pressure within the team is less. So 12, 13 years old, I joined Westchester Flames, my local club team out there in Westchester, New York. I played from 6th to 9th grade, 8th, 9th grade with Westchester Flames, while also playing junior varsity at my middle school, high school in 7th and 8th grade, playing junior varsity. And yeah, that's when I started playing more competitive, going to more showcase tournaments, that's also where I started meeting more prominent coaches that knew more about the game, former pros, like my first coach at Westchester Flames, Coach Dos Santos. He was one of the first coaches that really kind of gave me a little bit of confidence, just in terms of playing me a year or two up in some games, supporting me, of course, and coaching me on how to just be a better defender. These little things, I started to adapt within that and started to gain confidence, because not only was the coach showing faith and belief in me, but also the parents and the community around the team. I would get, nice words. And as a younger kid, yeah, you believe in yourself a certain amount, but until you start getting that confirmation around you, it's not what you need exactly, but it does help in terms of building confidence going forward. Decision to go from Flames to New York Soccer Club, just getting more exposure, more tournaments, to get more exposure for what was then the objective to play in college at the minimum. That starts popping in your head, becoming an idea, middle school, late middle school, high school, get highlights so you can, showcase yourself to college coaches. But then New York Soccer Club, because of Jeff Santos, thank you, my brother, I then meet another influential coach, Coach Brooksy at New York Soccer Club. He was the coach for the older team at the time, but then he eventually became my coach. In this time, he was also a trainer, so he would train New York Soccer Club players and other players from the area individually and in group sessions. And that's where I started to build a lot of more confidence, technical ability, just getting extra training and extra reps with like-minded individuals. The type of players that are going to those extra sessions are the type of people you want to be around. Of course, they're getting extra training in. Coach Brooksy was a big influence for me, because he was also former pro, played my position, very experienced, very good coach, and he was a hard coach on me. Definitely what I needed in the time, that high school time. He knew to get to the next level at center back, you got to be a tough, have some toughness to you. So he definitely had some tactics to help us toughen up, but overall, great guy, great trainer. Definitely, if you're in the Westchester area, check him out to train. He'll get you ready for whatever you need. In the fall season, I'm playing varsity from 9th to 12th, and this is when I get more of a connection with, I began the connection in 7th and 8th grade when I'm playing JV, but I start to build more of a connection with a very important coach in my life, but also friend, mentor in my life, Coach Prosperino. He was the head coach for the Valhalla varsity program, but also everything involving the program top to bottom. So I had some contact with him in the beginning, but once I got into the varsity setup, that's when he was able to influence me more. Looking back in this time, 6 years old to 12th grade, things that I learned in my youth, guys like Coach Dos Santos, Coach Brooks, Coach Prosperino. One of the biggest things I learned was, of course, being a coachable player, and that also, I believe, translates into being coachable in life, being able to listen. That's one of the biggest things. Listen and then execute. That's the biggest thing about being coachable. I remember with Coach Prosperino, it was early on in my varsity career. Something was happening in the game, something didn't go right. I throw my hands up, make it clear to everybody that I was pissed. And boom, right in that moment, minute later, 2 minutes later, I get subbed out, don't get put back in the game. Terrible. Never want this to happen again, but needed that in that moment, because that type of reaction isn't what any player should have in a game. And then especially not from a leader type player that I was trying to be, for sure, regardless of my age in the team. I always wanted to be someone who led by example. Going back when I'm 6, not being able to hold in the tears during a game when my dad's yelling me on the side, still prevalent more than a couple years later when I'm in high school, and doesn't turn into tears, but it's a bad reaction, not a good example. So still had some work to do on how to control my emotions within the game, and to get to where I am now, where I can keep it cool, keep it even within the game, being a team player and learning to be a part of a squad, part of a team dynamic. Just going to training 2 times, 3 times a week. Of course, you got your friends that you're closer with, but in the end of the day, you gotta pass the ball to everybody, especially on the field. They're gonna help you move forward, and you guys are all share the same objective. So, realizing that and just being a team player, being humble, these types of things all play key factors in being a good team player. Being disciplined was another key lesson I learned. Just with being able to, adapt to all these coaching points throughout the years, being able to now, okay, you can be coached in the moment and listen, but now can you be disciplined enough to the next game not have to be coached, right? So being disciplined was another thing. Before going to college, you start to gain some, once you're growing as a player and as a footballer, you start to gain some, drive within you to want to get better. So without being disciplined, you're not going to get much better. Another lesson I learned was how to fail. How to fail, taking losses in games, messing up in training, bouncing back, having a quicker reaction time from a mess up. Just to think about me, if I get cooked in a training when I'm younger, am I gonna, cry about it that day and be sad the rest of the day, or keep it moving and be like, let's never get cooked by an attacker again like that in training, because that felt terrible. So let's move on from it. But yeah, learning how to fail, being coachable, team player, discipline, and how to fail. I'd encourage you guys to drop a comment on some of your early experiences with sport. It doesn't have to be about football, it could be about any sport. Just be interested to hear some experiences, if any were similar to mine. All these lessons along the way paved the way for me to be able to not only get here right now, but take that next step from youth, high school, to now college, which is where we'll be headed next. Stay tuned next week for this next video to the NCAAs and my route through that. It's a bit unorthodox, journey through the NCAAs. Wasn't at one place for 4 years and then graduated. Lastly, thank you to all my family, friends, coaches, teammates along the way that supported me in this time period. Without, friends and support, don't grow that love for the sport. Building a foundation with your skills and your abilities, also building a foundation for a passion for the sport. You don't want to just be playing something because your friends are doing it. You want to actually be doing it because you're about it and you want to grow. Thank you if you've been watching up to this point. Thank you so much. Please like, comment, et todo. Thank you. See you next week. Ciao.
Go!